Hi everyone. I'm Edward Snowden here. Today we got some top secret files found about Donald Trump and his private sexy life. Note to disclaimer: this is actually a fan fiction. Don't fucking come after me, fucking CIA. Okay. Let's start this. So the file reads. The Donald stepped out of the doorway of his golden elevator into the corridor that led into his palpitical penthouse apartment. I don't know how to pronounce some of these words. At the door were 4 of his manservants. Lucky, he called them. They were called Lucky, he explained, because they were lucky to work for the most successful man in America, which was a great honor for the Luckies. But it was also highly confusing, given that the Donald called all 53 of his staff lucky, and never bothered to differentiate between them, partly because he didn't have the time, and partly because they were all Hispanic, and he genuinely struggled to differentiate between them. The Donald walked past a large gold statue of himself, in a Buddha pose, into the main lobby, Trump's side. As he called his apartment, named after the French Palace Versailles, though "way less gay," as he would tell guests, several more Luckies approached, offering the Donald various beverages, but he ignored them. Or, in the case of one unfortunate Lucky, who happened to present a goblet of pomegranate juice, the glass and the tray was slapped to the ground. "You idiot!" Trump yelled. "Look at what you did!" And kicked the Lucky as he bent down to retrieve the goblet. "Where the fuck do I have to get some decent help? China? Do I have to go to China?" Stalking through to his bedroom, the Donald walked into his bedroom. Man, this is good. There was a large portrait of the Donald on each wall. Above the bed, Donald as Alexander the Great. On the western wall, above a 10-meter by 10-meter television, was a portrait of Donald as all 4 heads of Mount Rushmore. Trump briefly glanced around, ensuring none of the Luckies was cleaning his bedroom, and approached a bust of himself as Roman Emperor Nero. Trump had chosen Emperor Nero because he got things done, and he liked classical music too. But now was no time for history lessons. He was about to leave for the Republican debate, and he needed some relief. There was now talk that the debate could dislodge as the Republican frontrunner, but the Donald knew deep in his heart that no one could replace him. He was unique, original, the one and only Trump. Trump reached behind the bust and pushed a small button. Immediately, a panel behind the bust opened, and Donald stepped through. He walked through a narrow corridor into his Trump relaxation room. The room was large as most New York as most New York apartments. The room had padding on the ground and benches on the side. And there it was, standing in the center. The Donald stood still for a moment, admiring it. Ivana had hated it, and in revenge for him having it, created it. She had pressured him to use what one newspaper headline had described as very painful and ultimately unsuccessful scalp surgery when he had begun losing his hair. That's totally true. But the Donald didn't regret a thing. Some men have blow-up dolls, but such a tacky, common thing was never going to be enough for a man like the Donald. Before him stood a custom-made pleasure robot that he'd secretly constructed in Germany. And Donald Trump's robot was a perfect replica of the Donald himself. "You handsome bastard," said Trump as he approached the pleasure bot and kissed it roughly on the lips. and the Trumpinator, as he called it, kissed him just a roughly back. Just as roughly back. Who the fuck wrote this? Yeah, you like it rough, don't you? Both Trump and the Trumpinator said in perfect sync with one another, their tongues locked and engaged in a titanic battle over the fallow ground of the true Trump's lips. The Trumpinator's lips were primarily silicone, and after years of plastic surgery, the Donald weren't that different. Pulling away, the Donald said to the Trumpinator, "Initiate process 4. The supercomputer inside the Trumpinator whirred into action, while the Donald's personality had been imprinted into the supercomputer that was been developed in Silicon Valley. When blended with the cyborg components of the Pleasure Bot, it was surprisingly adaptable and had a number of unique features. It could, of course, give blowjobs, and given it was modeled on Donald Trump, it could blow hard. Harder than virtually anyone else. It also had a variety of other useful functions, such as hairdryer, radio, bar fridge, and drink holder. It did not do anal, of course. The Donald would never inflict something that demeaning on the Trumpinator. But the process 4 was something special. It had taken the Germans months to program and build the feature in, but the Donald had incentive. The Trumpinator bent its knees and bowed before the Donald, and the Donald began undoing his fly. As his pants fell around his knees, the full glory of Process 4 started. The beautifully full hair on top of the Trumpinator began moving and shifting and rotating like the blade of a softened electronic razor. The Donald began thrusting hard into the mass of the chemically softened fossils. They had become carefully designed based on Donald's Buffant has had it been in the 70s. The hair wrapped itself around the hardened phallus. It was like an octopus consuming a shrimp. Donald came extremely quickly, as he almost always does. Irvana had once likened Donald's lovemaking to a Wall Street transaction. Virtually instantaneous, the Donald said. Initiate cleaning and donation. And a small plastic jar emerged from the side of the Trumpinator's head, and the hair was drained directly into the jar. The sample would be sent directly to a sperm bank in India. As a form of a charitable donation, the Donald knew it was generous, but his accountant assured him that it was a great deductible. The Trump zipped up his fly. See you later, beautiful. I gotta run. Wait one moment. The Donald looked at the Trumpinator strangely. It was the first time the Pleasure Bot had responded without being prompted. Stop being weird, or I'll have you sent back to the lab. And you know what those Germans are like, the Donald yelled. The Trumpinator stepped forward, opened its eyes wide, said, I love you. The Donald's face softened. Get in line, and he laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha. The Trumpinator stepped forward and punched the Donald hard in the face. The Donald flew back into one of the black walls of the pleasure room and crumpled into a heap on the ground. Walking over to the prone Donald, the Pleasure Bot leaned down and said, You fired. As it walked from the room, the Trumpinator checked his hair in the mirror. Sure, someone had just ejaculated into it, but strangely, it looked a little better than usual. As the Trumpinator sat in the helicopter on the way to the Republican debate, it looked over New York and muttered to itself, Soon, you'll all be fired. And that was the greatest file I have revealed. Basically, Trump is a robot fucker. And this is the best fanfiction I've ever read. Sorry, Trump. I'm sorry for ever, making fun of you. I'm sorry. You're my favorite president. You're better. You're the best president. But anyway, see you later. I'm just Edward Snowden here. Goodbye.